Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me here. In case you're new to tuning into this channel and my work is dedicated to helping those navigate the unseen dimension. Now, what this means is that we learn to enhance our abilities, our internal gifts, and empower ourselves by using them within our life, and also to communicate and commune with and connect with the spirits. And now I'm talking about the realms of the angels, the realms of maybe your guides or guardians, and even our dear loved ones. And there's many different dimensions and realms in which to communicate. And so this channel is all about that. Welcome to Creative Visions TV. I'm your host, Karen Dahlman. And today, this is the episode I'm kicking off the new year with my lineup of guests. And we're going to be talking about angels. I love angels. Who doesn't love angels? But I'm bringing on a special guest who not only speaks to them, but also brings forth their messages. Now, I met my angel, it was May 28th, 1994. Now, I knew I had an angelic presence around me from a very young age. I believed in guardian angels, and I always prayed to her in my prayers when I was a Catholic, being raised as a Catholic. But I felt an energy, but didn't know her name, wanted to know more about her. I knew she was female, but she finally came through to me, you guys, on the Ouija board. In fact, it's this Ouija board right behind me, the one that Santa Claus gave me in 1973. Well, fast forward, and I've been speaking to my angel ever since, and she comes through all the time during my sessions when somebody wants to receive a message from a loved one. She exclusively now represents those loved ones in spirit. So I met a psychologist not too long ago, several years back. Her name is Dr. Yafi Ayer, and she developed her own spirit board. Some people aren't always comfortable with the way the Ouija board looks. And people resonate with different things. She resonates with the archangels. So here's her board. Pretty cool, huh? It works really nicely too. So while we have our guest on here today, I'm going to put the spirit board back here. Because, yes, those spirit boards work just like Ouija boards. And this is going to inspire us and maybe bring in the angels as we have our talk. So before I bring our guest in and you meet him today, I want to tell you a little bit about him. Now, he is also a doctor, as a matter of fact. Growing up as a child in Queens, New York, he had his first experience with spirit. He saw a spirit at the age of 9. You guys, often people's stories start this way, where they start at a very young age. Well, fast forward now to the age of 13, he has another experience where he receives a premonition that literally saves the life of a friend. Now, he's struggling with this, can't make sense of it, trying to push it away, but he knows that he really wants to go into the helping field, the helping profession. So he becomes a paramedic. He also becomes a seasonal firefighter, and then he enrolls in medical school and becomes an eye doctor. But it was during his time at medical school when Pandora's box opened. And what I mean is that all these gifts and abilities he had been pushing down, as many of us do, and you guys out there know what I'm talking about, came bubbling up to the surface, but not in a simple, easy way. In fact, it caused great anxiety, frustration. He was starting to get panic attacks. That's how bad it was for him, you guys. So, he didn't really know what to do, but he shared it with his wife, and his wife, who's super supportive of his abilities and gifts, said, "Why don't you explore and figure out what this is about?" So he enrolled in a class and started learning that he's an empath. So he just wanted to get through, medical school, you guys. He was studying, science and medicine, and all of a sudden, here comes, boom, the paranormal from out of nowhere. That was not his interest at the time. But guess what? Now he regularly speaks to angels. He met his guardian angel, and his guardian angel had a message for him, and now he hears and speaks to them and brings forth their messages. Strange enough now, you guys, I met this gentleman halfway around the world. Yes, that's right. Last fall, I was speaking at Sage Paracon, which I did the year before as well. And there in the audience is this lovely man and his wife, and I heard that he speaks to angels. And I thought, I've got to meet this guy. So we finally met, but due to circumstances, being busy and all kinds of things going on at that event, we didn't get a chance to connect. Interesting enough, you guys, he lives right around the corner from me, literally like 45 minutes away. We both are in sunny Southern California. So fast forward now to December, and I had a reading from him. The read, you guys, was so good. It was exquisite, spot on. Things he said, there's no way he would have ever known. I keep these things private. It was amazing. So I just knew in an instant. I said, would you please come on my show? Because I wanted you guys to meet him too and enjoy him. So, are you ready? So without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Michael Terzi to the show. Welcome, Michael. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is really exciting. Thank you.
Well, it's great. And you guys, by the way, he is my first guest on the lineup of everybody I have this year. And I wanted to have him on because I wanted to kick off with Angels. We just got out of the season of Angels, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So
no pressure here.
No pressure, exactly. So Michael, let's go back. Let's go back to that when you were 9 years old and you first see spirit. Tell us what that was like for you.
Well, the actual experience was really interesting because it wasn't right away a full-on apparition or anything like that some people might see. I was just laying in bed. Things got really cold all around me, and I started shivering. And I heard something, but I couldn't quite make out what it was. And I looked over in the middle of my room. It's going to sound weird, but there was this little blue flame. And this little blue flame eventually turned into a hand. And the hand started, it was like a hand of fire almost, but it was blue. Not really fire. Obviously, I could see through it. And, and it started coming towards me a little bit. And so I got scared and I turned away, put my covers over my head kind of a thing, what a 9-year-old does. And then I thought I heard this little scream off in the distance. And then it was gone.
Wow.
And for the next couple of days, I felt a little uncomfortable, but I didn't see anything else. So it was a very crazy experience. And I told my parents about it. Just as you were, I was raised Catholic. I was even in Catholic school for about 3 years out of my life. And so naturally, when they heard about this, they said, oh, well, we should probably call somebody in. We don't want anything evil or anything, bothering us. Or yeah, exactly. We don't really know about these things. And when it comes to people that traditionally have dealt with these things, sometimes people in the Christian faith will turn to the church, whether it be if you're Catholic, you'll turn to a priest, whether it be if you're Baptist, Protestant, whatever it might be, you'll turn to a minister or something like that. Whatever it might be, you'll turn to them for any kind of help or guidance. So we actually had a father come in and bless the entire house. And from then on, I didn't feel a whole lot. I still felt things around me, but it wasn't really, really strong. Seemed like that was my one instance. And because of it, it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. It was a little jarring. And then, like you had mentioned in the intro, later on, I was still in Catholic school, and we were on a type of trip. So I guess it was like a field trip type of thing where we went out into the woods and we were doing these team building exercises in 7th grade. And we were on top of this really, really tall a platform, and there was a zip line. So you're supposed to get on this platform and then you take a zip line down to the ground, like way off in the distance. So it was pretty tall. And I was standing there waiting. My friend was in front of me talking, and I all of a sudden felt this weird chill go through me. And I saw an image of him trying to reach for the zip line, tripping and then falling from the platform.
Wow.
Now, whether he would have been just hurt or worse, I don't know, because I didn't see the ending of it. I just saw him reaching for it and then falling over the edge. So all of a sudden and I thought it was actually happening. So I kind of reached out in my head, and then all of a sudden I was back and I was talking to him, and I was like, what the hell just happened? This is nuts.
Whoa.
I thought he just fell. And so he finishes talking to me, he turns around and he reaches for it. And as soon as he reaches for it, I grab his arm, and then his foot misses the platform and he starts to almost fall, but I grab with both arms now and I pull him up. And he's like, whoa, thanks, man. I don't know what was going on there. I totally lost my footing. And from then on, I just always wondered what that was.
Well, how did you make sense of that? I mean, you're seeing something and you're not sure if that already happened or
Yeah.
didn't? I mean, how did you make sense of that? What did you think it was?
I didn't know. I mean,
Mm,
I thought that maybe I just had a flash of just it was just a clear sight for me. Like I was thought maybe I just all like maybe God intervened
huh.
or
Okay.
something like that. You know, being Catholic school, you know, obviously
Right.
we talk a lot about that stuff. Um, you know, something intervened to help me try to help a friend of mine, someone that needed that help, someone that was going to make a mistake. And so I kind of thought about that for a while. Life happened, and we moved away
Hmm.
from where we were. We were actually living in Virginia for a time at that point, and we moved from Virginia back out to California. And then I was homeschooled in eighth grade. And during that time, I was really concentrating on trying to acclimate to California, trying to acclimate to being homeschooled and catching up with certain things, and then getting ready for high school. And so I didn't have a whole lot going on during that time. In fact, when I got into high school, it all kind of switched off because I wanted to fit in. You know, I
Right.
wanted to be a normal guy just around everybody. And coming out of state, other side of the country, even, you know, East Coast to West Coast, you know, it's very different. And so I was just trying just to acclimate. And every now and then I would feel things. I feel like maybe I would be able to sense certain things about people. I'm decent judge sometimes of what people might be feeling. And so I was really good at being able to try to fit in. I guess I could adapt very well because I knew how people were and how they were acting and what they felt like.
Did you know that
So
that's part of being intuitive or
yeah,
empathic? You didn't understand
I
any of
didn't know.
that.
I
Okay.
didn't know. I just thought that, you know, hey, I'm just really good at getting along with people. You know, I'm a good, easygoing guy, you know, that kind of thing, trying to fit into the California lifestyle, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and then
And
we would call that chameleons. But you guys,
yeah,
if you're listening to the stories, he's telling it to you. You're going to hear some of these things about yourself because a lot of people that watch this and
exactly.
part of this channel with me, you guys are intuitive, empathic people that are sensitives. I was always
Yeah.
told, Michael, I was always told, oh, you're too sensitive. You don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Well, what I was doing is I was reading everybody just like you.
Yeah.
So we had a different way of saying it. And usually it's shunned. I would say today, because of all the shows on TV, it's not as shunned. But
Mhm.
when you're growing up too, it's kind of shunned. Don't do those things that could be evil or bad, or you shouldn't be that
Oh
sensitive.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, definitely. Especially, you know, growing up and being in Catholic school for a while, you know, these kinds of things aren't supposed to happen. You know,
Right.
you're not supposed to, you know, actually when I was in Catholic school for the short time I was, and but even when we would go to church and things before that and after that, you know, you don't hear a lot about the angels. You don't hear a lot about um, certain kinds of gifts that people might have. You read about it
Mm-hmm.
in the Bible about prophets and, you know, things like, you know, people healing one another or people getting messages from different realms and things like that. But you don't hear a lot about the angels themselves. I think they're only mentioned a couple of times, really. You know, Archangel Gabriel, you know, Archangel Raphael, Michael. You know, you get the big ones, you know, but you don't really hear a lot about your angels. You don't hear a lot about the guardian angels, the ones that are around you all the time. You don't hear a lot about the ones that help to take care of the planet, the ones that, you know, deliver messages to people randomly, not just a guardian angel, the ones that travel through dimensions and, you know, take care of the cosmos. You know, there's angels all over that have so many different responsibilities, so many different jobs, and how they interact with us is not really talked about too much.
And you didn't
Whether
know all
people,
this back then yourself. This is something you
no,
you grew into because
yeah,
you've got to tell us, when you went to graduate school, how everything just kind of blew up for you. I mean, you were already in the helping profession. You were already, rescuing people, saving people's lives. I mean, some
yeah.
pretty critical stuff. But then you go to medical school, and I'm surprised you didn't open up during those times of
Yeah, I
all,
know.
because when you're on the edge, it's like, and as a therapist myself, on the edge of like for me, it was like suicidal people or very critically ill people that you're touching that other
Yeah.
realm. I'm just
Oh, yeah.
surprised I didn't open up, and it was not until medical school.
Yeah, it was looking back after I did open up to everything and became who I am today. That was one of the reasons why I stopped being an EMT, I believe, is because of my
Mm.
empathy.
Ah.
Whenever you go to something tragic, whether it be an automobile collision, whether it be someone committing suicide, an overdose, heart attack,
Mhm.
these things are tragic. And there's so much energy that gets built up in the actual action itself, as well as the person you're trying to help. And there have been times where I've been able to help and been able to save their life, or at least get them to the hospital so that they can do their job to help save the person's life. But then there are those that, you lose them. And after tragic things like that, you're required to go do like a debriefing type of thing where sometimes psychologists, sometimes counselors will talk with people after a terrible incident to make sure that you're okay mentally to continue working. And I had gone to a couple of those things, and I never really got over a lot of the things that I experienced.
Oh, okay.
You still see the faces, you still feel the energy almost. And to me, when I was going through all that, I just thought, well, anyone would have a problem with this, and I just can't handle it, I guess. Like you said, I wear my heart on my sleeve too much. I just feel too much, And so I actually stopped being an EMT that was one of the reasons, aside from changes that were going on in Riverside County. But I stopped doing that because of one of those reasons. And then getting into firefighting seasonally was something like I still wanted to help.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were putting paramedics on fire engines and things too. That was when they first started requiring that. And so I got into that because of that too, but then same things started happening. Plus, being a seasonal firefighter, you get really bored sometimes. And I'm the kind of guy that wants to have multiple things going on. I don't want to sit still. I want to be doing things. So medical school was really interesting. We had just gotten married, me and my wife. And we had, as I was applying, I found out that I got in before our actual wedding. Got married, went on our honeymoon, came back, and then boom, in medical school. Everything was pretty normal for a while. There were personal things that were happening at home. I was commuting a lot because we didn't want to live in Pomona at the time. We wanted to stay where we were here. So I decided to commute. I figure, how hard can it be? Well, there's a lot of traffic. Pomona at its best is an hour and a half away. So
just so you guys understand, where we live is south of LA. We're kind of in the greater LA area, although they're different towns. And just imagine the City of Angels, as we're talking about angels, the City of Angels, it's loaded with traffic, you guys. So when you should be there an hour and a half, it's going to be like 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I especially experienced that coming home. But there were a lot of things that built up to it. And one of the things about medical school is that it can be pretty intense. There's a lot of information to take in. There's competition between people sometimes. We all try to help each other during medical school, obviously, study groups and things like that, but it can be a lot. And then the driving, and then obviously being a newlywed couple, there was a lot of stress and strain that was going into it. And it's not just me. I mean, there was over 100 people in my class that were having similar issues. They're stressed, they're having strain. And then when you have finals, midterms, national board exams that can decide your future, it gets more and more intense. And during high school, undergrad, I was, believe it or not, a pretty chill guy. I would study, I would do well. I would say, you know what, I studied. I pass, I don't, whatever. I wouldn't put that strain on myself, And I noticed one day that during one of the exams, I was so incredibly anxious. It was amazing how anxious I was. I just didn't understand why. It was getting to me. I could feel it in my heart. I could feel it all over my chest, my back. I could feel it in my hands. I was shaking almost. And I tried to take a few deep breaths, go into the bathroom, relax. It's okay. It's just another exam, Mike. Relax. It's okay. And got through the exam, noticed that it wasn't stopping, that almost every exam that I had, even though I knew the stuff, I knew it, was causing me all this anxiety. And sometimes it would interfere with what kind of grade I got. It's not like I was failing things, but there was a lot of things where I was like, I should have gotten an A on this, or I should have gotten even a B on this. You're like, what is going on? I know this stuff. And it got to the point where I was even hearing things in my head sometimes, which sounds crazy.
Like what?
But
what do you mean?
What was it? My dad's going to kill me. I can't, I don't know this. Should I change it to A or B? There are little things that I would
You were
get
starting to
because,
kind of pop under the pressure of stress, because stress could
yes,
do a number of things to us. And in your case, it sounds like you kind of wanted to blame it on the testing, but I think something else was going on. Am I right to say that? You wanted to blame it on the testing, but that was just kind of,
yes, that's
yeah.
exactly right. I thought that I was just, and logically in my head,
Well,
I'm in
logically,
medical
right. You're a
school.
science guy. You
Yeah,
got a facts and
exactly.
figures.
I've always been in science. I've always loved science, biology, chemistry has always been my hard one, but physiology,
Hmm.
physics, I loved it all. And so I was like, logically, it's just hard. I'm just having a tough time. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep, things like that. 'Cause, I mean, I would get a few hours sleep and then I drive to Pomona, sit in a study room since 5 a.m. to study before a test. So, I'm just tired. One of those things you
Hmm.
just kind of write it off as. And so, but why was I getting all these things in my head? Where were all these thoughts coming from? They weren't mine. And I
Hmm.
knew they weren't mine because I had my answers set. This is what I was going to be. And then I wasn't afraid of what my parents were going to think of me not doing as well on one exam, but someone in there was. And I didn't know what it was, though. And I would have panic attacks, like you had mentioned, as I was driving home in like 2 3 hour traffic. I'd be sitting in my truck and I'm driving and I would start crying and then I would be shaking. And I'm like, and I'm not ashamed to say it. A lot of guys aren't supposed to share their feelings, but I tell everybody that I had these huge panic attacks and I couldn't understand what it was. One day I just had enough of it and I had to turn to my wife, who's been super supportive and amazing through everything that I've done ever since I've met her. And one of the things that she said was, she hears everything that's going through my head, everything that has happened to me. And she just randomly says, well, maybe you're an empath. And I said, well, what's an empath? And she's like, I don't know. Let's look it up. And I said, wow, you just pulled that out of thin air,
Yeah, where'd she get that
And
word from, Michael?
yeah, exactly. And come to find out that as we looked it up and learned a little bit more about it, being a doctor, I was like, yeah, these are the same symptoms that I'm going through. These are the same things that I'm getting. I'm experiencing all of these things. I guess I'm an empath. And it was hard for me to understand, but at the same time, it made sense. And when you experience these things, no matter how logical your mind might
Right.
be, no matter how much you try to push away the paranormal or the supernatural or whatever people might call it, you can't ignore it when it happens to you. And that's one of the things that I tell people all the time is that you may not understand it now. Because I've done readings now for cynics, skeptics, people who are all the way in it, and everything in between, people who are curious and just want to know more. And I told them the exact same thing is that once you have that experience, once you feel that, once you know that something else is out there that you just don't understand, not only do you want to understand it, but you also have to accept it. It's one of those things. And when logic fails us, sometimes it's the illogical that makes the most sense. And so I looked into it more, and it was still tough for me. I was taking national board exams at that time, and that was really rough because there's 3 exams that optometrists have to go through. And so I was taking the first 2, and each time I could feeling the same thing I was feeling during finals was I hear people, I'm feeling this.
Wow.
I had to ask somebody who's supervising to take me to the bathroom like 3 times. They're wondering if I'm
What,
looking at
just to
notes.
clear your mind so you didn't hear these
Yeah,
thoughts from people?
exactly, because you're in
Wow.
it, you're taking all of this, and these tests decide whether or not you get licensed as a doctor. And people get stressed, and you can't help it. I don't blame any of them for it because I was feeling my own amount of stress, but then I get it now times 10 from the 80 people in the room with me.
No, at this
So
point, you didn't know how to stop it yet. You hadn't learned enough yet. Okay.
I hadn't. I had learned that it was happening to me,
Okay.
and my wife helped me to look into it. We actually turned to certain crystals.
Oh.
We looked it up, and certain crystals supposedly would help me with being an empath.
Like,
They
give us an
help to absorb
example
energy.
what you
Okay.
used.
Yeah. I didn't grab the props, but there are certain things that my wife bought for me online that she had seen that would help. For example, black tourmaline.
Oh, grounding.
Um,
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
was a really great crystal, and we had read not only about the grounding, but the fact that it actually absorbs energy.
Yes, it does.
So actually having that, so she got me a necklace with black tourmaline. Um, I pronounce it agate. I don't know if other people pronounce it something else. And hematite.
Oh,
So it
hematite's
was an
another
actual,
good one.
yeah,
Protection and grounding. Wow.
yeah.
She went right for the good ones, the big
Oh
ones.
yeah. Oh yeah. And she was all about it. And I was really interested too because hematite, has a bunch of other physical properties to it as well that people may know about. Has a magnetic pulse through it,
Yeah.
so that's why people put it in those bracelets
Hmm.
to help with balance and equilibrium, and sometimes joint pain and things like that too. So I was like, oh, really? So this helps with this, and
That's
it
great.
was had a bunch of beads and it was all around. So she said,
Mm.
this way it's all around you. And so it helps. So just wear this necklace. They don't make you take off jewelry when you go into tests. So just wear the
It's
necklace.
like around your head, so you can like maybe clear the head,
Yeah,
protect
yeah,
it from the energy. That's fantastic.
exactly. And it wasn't perfect, but it did help. And but I was still experiencing these things even outside. Like before, I would just experience it when I was taking exams or in class. Then all of a sudden, I started feeling other people's emotions, just my family, my
Mm.
friends, at work, because I was still working a little bit even while I was in school, and it was really getting annoying. Honestly, it
Mm.
felt almost debilitating for me because
Yeah.
I feel like I can't feel for myself anymore. Now I know that I'm an empath. I'm feeling everyone else's emotions even stronger than I'm feeling my own almost. So I wanted to try to figure out how to shut it down. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I was saying to myself, this is too much. I can't take on all this. I just want to pass my tests and be a doctor. That's all I wanted to do. Just want to be an eye doctor, go in and help people get contacts and glasses, and just be done. My wife is the one who encouraged me and said, no, this is something that you can probably control. You don't have to try to turn it off. Let's see if there's a way for you to be able to control it and to be able to
Mm.
use it. For some reason, she just knew. She felt that it wasn't something that I needed to try to shut down. And before, she hadn't known a lot about all the things that I'd gone through in my life. I didn't talk a lot about the thing happened when I was 9, the premonition that happened when I was
Yeah.
13, the little feelings I would get every now and then. She just kind of knew that. When she said that to me, I said, okay, what can we do? And so she looked it up, she looked around, and there were classes that
Yeah.
certain people were giving around the area, mostly about mediumship. So, or energy, or, people talking about chakras and things like that, that I had no idea about at all at the time. I was never into any of the yoga, the chakras, the and talking about energy and aura. I had no idea about it.
I'm
I,
laughing
I,
because Michael, you were just thrown into it,
I was.
and I would have to say also, I want people out there to listen too about to this. I, I said thrown into it kind of tongue in cheek because I really believe that we have contracts we make before we come here into our lives, and therefore Michael probably signed up to do this. Yet the
Yes,
way it shows
you're
up,
right.
though, surprise, here I am. It's not always easy, you guys. It's not
Yeah.
always easy, and you out there have had similar experiences. I know you have. You write to me and tell me, and that it's great and fine and dandy when it all works, but when it's coming to you, it's not always easy, and that's why it's important you
Yeah.
hear Michael's story about this.
Oh yeah, and that's why I try to tell people all the time. My shorter version sometimes of my story is that it doesn't always happen at an early age, and then it just sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it happens, and then teenager, 20s, 30s, it could just be 40s, 50s, it could
Yep.
pop out of nowhere. I mean, I've met people that are students of mine or have just talked to me about things or I've given readings to that are just now coming into their gifts in their 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just amazing to see that it just comes at all different levels. It's just about when you're ready.
That's right.
My angels always tell me it's about when it's time. It's almost like subconsciously your soul is like, okay, here we go, and then it just pops out, and it sometimes can wreak havoc on your life. But the important thing is to, like my wife had mentioned to me then and inspired me to do, is to not shut it down, because it's a part of who you are. It really is. And if you don't really understand it, that's okay. You can find ways to better understand it. Just like when you learn about a talent that you have, or if you learn about a different aspect of yourself that you don't quite know about, different strengths that we all have. You don't try to ignore those strengths. You don't want to ignore the fact that you're really good at playing the guitar, even though you found out when you were 30. You want to play the guitar more. There are different things. This is another strength that we have, another gift that people have. And although not everybody has it to the same degree as others do, I think everyone, in essence, has some sort of spiritual gift that they just don't know about or haven't awoken to yet. So I took these classes in an effort to try to control it. But there were no specific empath classes out there.
Mm.
There were just classes about, and like I said, energy, chakras, auras,
Right.
mediumship. And I didn't want to go to them at first because I said, well, I'm not a medium. I'm not anything like that. I'm just this empath guy that's walking around feeling people's emotions and going crazy. And Greta's like, no, let's just go. Just go to the class. And so I went to these classes from different various teachers around the area. And one day I was actually kind of had enough. I would say, you know what? It's getting worse. The more classes I go to, the stronger my empathy is becoming.
Wow.
I tried to take bits and pieces from every class and to help myself. Try to use little bits of it each time. Okay, now breathe, do this breath work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, close your eyes and count, or, there's different things that people would say to try to help control it.
Ground yourself,
really,
the white light,
yeah,
Reiki.
Even the crystals weren't helping as much.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I just need to shut this down. And as soon as I said that, instantly, I saw my first human spirit.
Ooh, here
and
we go.
It just came out of nowhere. It was just leaning up against the wall, and there was this guy, and I was, what the hell is happening right now? I rub my eyes, I'm looking away, I'm looking back, it's still there.
Now, how'd you know it was the spirit?
Because I was alone in a room.
He popped in out of nowhere?
Yeah, it was early morning. My wife was still asleep. I was sitting in a room here just agonizing over why I can't control this. I still had another board exam I needed to do, and I was like, I can't be feeling all of this during this exam. And then I saw this guy, and he just kind of came out of nowhere. I couldn't hear him very well at first.
Oh.
One of the things that I realized, and I tell people about in my classes or just in readings, is that it's the ringing in the ears. I know about tinnitus, obviously, as a doctor, and there are different conditions that people can get tinnitus with. Mm-hmm. I don't have any of those. I've never had anything like that. And tinnitus is usually in both ears. You usually get it going in both ears. This one, I just had this high-pitched ringing out of just one ear. And it would happen whenever I saw him kind of open his mouth. So I couldn't hear his words. I could feel him. I saw him. But every time it was kind of like Charlie Brown adults, instead of it being like a walk, it was like a whenever he would open his mouth. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry, I can't understand you. I don't know what you're saying, and I for some reason, I just wasn't really scared. I was shocked, but I felt a peace with it almost. Like this was supposed to happen. I'm supposed to see him. And fast forwarding a little bit, I saw human spirits for a while, and then again, it kind of got to be too much. I was, okay, so I'm an empath. Now I'm seeing spirits. I can't even hear them. I don't know.
And I just want to be an eye doctor.
Yeah. Basically.
Come on, you guys.
Like, this is not logical. This is not making sense. Why me? Why now? I mean, I'm in my, by this time I'm 31, 32 or something like that. And like, this is supposed to happen to people earlier in life. I thought this is not something that I've ever had or experienced. And then, at this time, my wife was with me too. And I was basically complaining to her, almost to the point of just frustration, and just had it. And then we were sitting in the room, and to my other side, there was a window. And I saw this huge bright light come out of this window and from the outside in. And I said, what is, and I tried to look to it. And even though it wasn't a real light that everyone else can see, I had to close my eyes because it was so bright. But I still saw it in my third eye. At the time, not knowing a lot about what the third eye is, but I can still see it even though my eyes are closed. And I felt this warmth and this overpowering, unconditional love coming from this light. And I just started, like, tears just started streaming down my face. And I wasn't like an ugly face cry either. Like I was sitting there bawling. It was just, my eyes are open. I'm feeling all these emotions, and I just have waterworks just coming streaming down my face. Wow. And my wife's like, are you okay? Like, she's freaking out. She's like, what's wrong? And I just hear this voice in my head, and he says, Michael, I am your guardian angel. And I was just uh, what? Like,
Right?
I was like, oh my God. And I believed him. And because I could feel that emotion and this light, and I could see the wings, and I'll get into that later on if we talk about it. But, I saw the wings, and he was so huge too. The angels are massive.
Yeah, they are.
And I could, and he was coming in, and this white light, and I was just looking at him, and my wife Greta is like, are you okay? Like, she just sees me stunned and crying and looking out the window. And he comes up and he says, now what I need you to do is knock it off.
Beep.
And I'm like, did you just curse at me? Like, and he says, you need to knock it off. He says, this is who you are, more than you ever know. This has always been you. This has been something that was supposed to awaken in you a long time ago. Now's the time. And the only way for you to be able to control it is to accept it and to be who you really are, finally.
Wow, what a message, Michael. I mean, that right there, how do you say no to that?
You can't. I literally couldn't.
Thank you for watching part 1 with Dr. Michael Terzi as he shared his journey that led up to encountering his guardian angel. Be sure to watch part 2, where Dr. Michael will let us know about how his newfound ability developed for him, as well as share the teachings and messages the Angelic Kingdom brings forth for humanity. The link to part 2 is available in the About the Video section below. Until next time, this is Karen Dahlman with Creative Visions TV.